why you should remain calm, collected, and how you can seek clarity for yourself and bring an air of confidence to your team members is just so essential.
I think something to unpack is also they're not watching you to judge you.
Visible confidence correlates with status.
I think as a leader, we don't realize that we set the emotional temperature in our team and in the organizations.
But remember that your micro behaviors are shaping your culture every day in your company. You have control.
Because when you are canceling a one-to-one, you are actually sending a message to your team members saying that time with you is not important.
How to model confidence, calm, and consistency during turbulent times.
Maybe some people need to hear today is that your team doesn't need a perfect leader. They just need someone who is steady, who is stable, who is calm, who is bringing them clarity, who is consistent, who is communicating, who is building their confidence.
Welcome to Breaking the Chain, brought to you by Impel Talent. I'm Nathaniel Chapman.
And I'm Terentia, Brau.
Welcome back to Breaking the Chain. Today we have a really incredible topic, one that I was really excited to open up with Terentia, which is your team is watching. How to model confidence, calm, and consistency during turbulent times. And as always, I'm excited to welcome back Terentia, our Chief Coaching Officer and my co-founder. Hey, T, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to unpacking this today. It's been something that we've been talking about almost over the last few weeks, like within coaching sessions, I think just on posts on LinkedIn. So I think it's good for us to just talk about some of these practical how tools. How can leaders model confidence, calm, and consistency, even when they don't feel those things inside of them, right?
I think when we come into this, we hear about it so much in the sessions that we do. I think it's one of the big reasons we have come into environments, especially for the coaching and leadership pieces. We're working with businesses that are going through turbulent times and their leaders are having challenges, and the ability to root this back into why you should remain calm, collected, and how you can seek clarity for yourself and bring an air of confidence to your team members
Absolutely.
is just so essential.
Absolutely. They are watching you. I think something to unpack is also they're not watching you to judge you. I think a lot of sometimes leaders go, oh, it feels overwhelming or it feels stressful that people they're watching you to, pick apart what you're doing or poke holes in what you're doing. But actually, people just genuinely want to see behaviors being role modeled and learn from it. And so I think if we as leaders can understand that weight we do carry, there's a weight as leaders that we are under the microscope or under the magnifying glass. So whatever that we do gets magnified. I think it's important for us to understand that there are tools that we can use to help us, to help the team, and not see it as a judgment, I would say.
Yeah, I think when it comes to it, I think it's sometimes, I mean, I've felt I was just explaining a load of old anthropology and evolution. You know what I'm like. I dig into all the old stuff. I annoy Terentia with it all the time. But I would say that it's not always about just faking it, because I think that's the feeling that some leaders who are maybe very authentic feel uncomfortable having to just give off that energy. We talk around good leaders being in two categories sometimes. I do anyway. Don't want to speak for Terentia, but you have very empathetic leaders and you unfortunately can have very narcissistic leaders. Both can demonstrate confidence and people can gravitate to it, which is insane, right? That's what people believe in, and they start fearing from there that this is a leader I want to dive into. But let's say if you're more emotionally intelligent or more aware, have a lot more empathy, sometimes you may not feel super confident in what's happening next. So why we talk about the 10% rule is it's really not for yourself. It's really about trying to put your team in the best position to be successful. So, think about it not as being, I don't want to say like uncreditable or not genuine. It's about actually believe. And in many cases, if you are someone who's, I think this is mainly for leaders who haven't maybe gone through that experience before. For those who have been through those turbulent times, you realize that there is light at the end of the tunnel. So you don't have to fake it till you make it. So look at that. Reflect on the 10% rule. Think about how you can apply it. Think about what situations it's applicable to. And remember, your team's always watching.
Absolutely. And I'd say one reflection and a question that you could ask yourself the next time you in a tough situation, a tough meeting, what would 10% more confident look like for you in that meeting? What would 10% look like for you? So I think it's about you just establishing where you're at, and it's about building your self-awareness as well as the leader.
I think one thing, and I'll bring it back to this, humans are uncertainty adverse, right? We prefer clear direction over ambiguity. So often signals like safety and control, both of which are reassuring to others, and confident people in your team, so those that are beneath you, whatever level of leadership you are, the more they believe that you have their careers in the company and the things confidently in hand, the more they tend to have positive feelings, and they tend to exhibit calmness and trust. And when people observe you or your team as a whole, this confidence can unify team members. And I think we've talked about it in previous episodes. It's not about faking. There's a level of you could fake confidence too much, right? Where people know that there are problems, but you're like, there's no issue. You're fine. And that can have an adverse effect because you have to be real about what's happening in front of you, but confident that you can
Yeah.
rebuild or get through
Yeah.
it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that first C, that confidence, I think is the foundation for the other
This is tool number 2.
for the other 3 C's that are coming through.
She's getting ahead of herself. That's her. So we finished tool 1. We'll move to tool number 2. Sorry, plus you've been in turbulent times with your son. Um,
This, I'm still remaining calm. I'm trying to remain calm. Everyone, we are live, so this is really practicing what we're teaching. But the 3 C's that we'll unpack it a bit now. So just to understand what those 3 C's are, it's calm. So it's a framework. So it's calm, clarity, and consistency. So if we talk about the first C, which is calm, um, I think as a leader, we don't realize that we set the emotional temperature in our team and in the organizations. Because again, people are watching us, right? So the behaviors that we exhibit, and it could be these micro behaviors that can help to project calm. So what are some of these examples that maybe we can talk about? So the first one is speaking slightly slower. This was a massive one for me because as a South African, when I get excited, I speak very fast. When I'm a bit nervous, I end up speaking much faster. And so when I moved to Sweden to lead my team there, this was one of uh, the skills I had to learn how to slow down because I literally could see in front of my eyes that I'm losing my team. As I'm speaking, I'm losing them. Like it's going over their head because one, I'm speaking too fast, or even the language that I'm using, it was too fast. So I found a way of reminding myself while I'm speaking how to speak slower. So I literally used to say, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down until my brain caught up. And then I could speak out to my team. And so it was a practical reminder for myself and a trigger that I could see the cues. So I was observing my team as I'm speaking. And so that speaking slightly slower in these turbulent times really goes a long way because you're also talking to people from different cultures, different language levels. It is different. So we need to be mindful of that.
But again, it demonstrates that level of confidence that is, you're not in a rush, you're not panicked.
Yes, we're not panicked.
There's another book that I toss about, I'd love tossing books on here, which is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And he talks about negotiation techniques. And he talks about a low DJ voice he uses, and which he speaks slowly. And this is what they used in hostage negotiation techniques. So, and it was to calm people that are in, you can't be in more of a turbulent situation than being a hostage taker. I imagine you're a hostage for that matter. So he needed to bring them down, level them, calm them, speak them into a result. And for him, that is the end result of everybody leaving the building. Like the negotiator, get the hostage takers, they don't get anything out of that deal, right? They just get arrested. So, and that's what the premise is of the book. But the reality is you have to bring people to a calm space, and that confidence, that deep voice, that enunciation, those things all hit those nice verbal verbal cues, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you've linked it to another behavior is that the not rushing. The not rushing, again, they are mirroring your behavior. So if you're not rushing, they will not rush. And because in the rushing, we can't think clearly. Yeah. The other one that has helped me, and we teach many, many leaders, is about breathing. So even just taking a breath before responding. Because what happens is when people are coming to you in a panicked state, they tend to be contagious to you. So you end up being panicked as well, right? So when they come to you and they're asking you questions and they are panicked, what you can do is actually take a deep breath and they can visibly see that. And they will inevitably take a deep breath as well. So you take a deep breath because you're now absorbing what did they just say? What did they just ask before you respond? Because if you were just listening to respond, you may miss key pieces of information or just understanding what is it they actually need from me. You may be just answering at a very surface level and it's not really addressing how that person's feeling or what are they asking you. Yeah. So
You've done such
if
a great job because you're leading us straight into number 2, which is clarity. I was wondering how we were gonna move from calm to clarity, which is exactly what you were saying.
yeah,
People can handle direct, straight communication, especially when it's delivered the right way, which I think is sorry, I'm introducing 2 for you, but clarity.
yeah, go for
You
it.
need to be able to demonstrate and bring clarity. That's the second of the 3 C's, if you're remembering our there's a quiz at the end. Just kidding. Um, so T, how are some ways that people can demonstrate clarity or because I think this is one that gets missed a lot. I think a lot of times leaders can give too much information. Sometimes people can feel like they have to answer all the answers or they don't have enough. But how can you maybe demonstrate a good way to bring clarity across?
Great. So some house that I've personally used and it's worked for me. We teach this to our leaders again. So the first one is comes back to communication, right? Using short sentences. So the worst thing we can do when things are turbulent or we're in a crisis is to be verbose. Is to like explain and explain and explain because we will lose people. So keep the sentences short. The other thing we can do is be explicit. So don't leave room for assumptions where people have to read between the lines. Rather just say it, specifically and say, okay, here's what this means for us today. Here's what we know today. And this is how it will impact us. So being very clear. The other one, and I know Renisha is listening, and we teach this a lot and we use it a lot, is the power of three. So break things down into 3 points. So you would see today, even we've used the threes, right? Because our brains actually can remember in threes. When we give too much information, we actually forget them. So the power of three. So breaking things down in 3 points. And then repetition. So if we think back to our kindergarten days, um, we learned by repetition. Yeah. I'm sure, kids would have come home and they are practicing and practicing at nausea for their parents to go over and over and over. But the repetition matters because when we're repeating these key messages on a weekly basis, it could be maybe on a fortnightly basis, whatever the case is, depending on your team, depending on the situation, people will remember. And those things become anchors, and that the clarity grows because maybe the first time you said it, the seed just landed, the seed just got planted. But then as you keep repeating it, it becomes more clearer and clearer to them. Yeah. So that's what I would say. Those would be some of the very practical ways you can bring clarity into these situations.
I love that because clarity is a gift. It reduces fear and it reduces guessing. And I think I've always, I know it's probably more of my American nature, so I can be quite brutal in direct communication, even from my American upbringing, raised by wolves in some cases. Um, but I think that directness and ability to connect, it does again breed confidence because you're like, these are straight answers. These are direct, even if it's something where you're being just quite direct and confident on what the next step is. I mean, it might not be that you have an answer. It might be that we'll know by the end of this week, or you're going to get an update, or the leadership are currently working on this, or These are little cues that give someone a sense of like we're pushing, we're moving forward, right?
Mm.
Everyone wants to just know that we're moving forward and we're not stagnant and we're not frozen. Deer in the headlights look. So
Yes.
a lot of these communication cues are designed to help you build trust and confidence in the team that you're working with. And
Absolutely.
and T was mentioning it there, but the consistency is huge because I just did a post on this morning. If you want to engage and like and comment, feel free to get involved. Um, but it talks about how actually, I don't know if people know this, but you only retain in like over 72 hours or like within a week, 90% or 10% of the message from face-to-face interactions. People actually remember how you made them feel. And that's because emotions are a natural highlighter. It was crazy, the statistics. It was like something like almost 50% of the messages lost within 12 hours or by the end of the day. Within 48 hours, it's like 70% of the message is gone,
Mhm.
90% by the end of the week. So being consistent, even if it feels like you're beating a dead horse, is actually just giving people that reassurance, which again is going to impact the way they feel. And that leads us to C number 3, T, consistency.
At Impel Talent, we've worked with thousands of people and teams. And one thing is clear. People don't fail because they lack ambition. They struggle because they don't have a safe, unbiased space to learn, reflect, and grow.
Most people are growing quietly, under pressure, and often alone. And they're asking themselves, how do I lead without losing myself? How do I guide others when I'm still figuring it out? How do I build confidence when everything feels overwhelming?
It's not that they don't care. It's that traditional leadership development isn't connected to real life. Leaders don't need more checklists. They need space to pause, think, and make sense of their experiences. Because when people feel supported and understood, clarity grows, confidence builds, and they show up more grounded and intentional.
And that's why we built Impel Connect, a space for real leadership growth, real support, and real human connection. A platform that brings coaching, community, and development into one accessible place. Because growth shouldn't be exclusive. It should be available to anyone ready to invest in themselves.
So what are you waiting for? Join us at app.impeltalent.com. Webinars, workshops, coaching, and most importantly, community.
Impel Connect, genuine human connection in your pocket.
Consistency. This is the one leaders forget the most. Sorry to say, but I think as human beings, it's not so easy. Yeah. And I saw a picture recently, and I think we were talking about it in our Monday meeting with the team. What does consistency look like? So I saw a picture where there were targets. So um, like the bow and arrows, where we have the archery, and we have three. So if we have 7 days a week, and we have 3 arrows on bullseye every day of the week, and unfortunately, that's not the real true picture of consistency. What true consistency looks like is that we tried every day of the week. It may not be exactly the same, it may not be the same things we've tried, but we are being consistent in what we are trying. So consistency actually builds psychological safety. And so some of the habits that can help us, I think the first one I'd say is that you can do a check-in or have a check-in rhythm every week, the same check-in rhythm. So people need to be able to predict that on a Monday at 3:00, I am speaking to my manager. Yeah. Or my manager is having a weekly meeting with us. And there needs to be a real fire or emergency for you to cancel that, right?
Yeah.
Um,
We find that's the
yeah,
thing that gets canceled the quickest, which I find insane. The one-to-ones go in turbulent times.
yeah,
People feel like disconnected, and that distance is what gets people so panicky. I was saying the human imagination is incredible. So during these difficult periods, you aren't hearing from your leader, and your one-to-ones get canceled because they and not for a negative reason, but that's not how it can
yeah,
sometimes be perceived.
100%, 100%. And I think this is one of the biggest ones that we really drill into leaders because it sends such a strong message to your team members that I care. I care about the time that I've put in my calendar. It's your time. Because when you are canceling a one-to-one, you are actually sending a message to your team members saying that time with you is not important. The time that was created for you, it's the first to go. So I think it sends a very strong message if you do the same check-in rhythm every week. It really gives that individual confidence and that psychological safety really that they matter and the things that they have to say also matter. Um, the other one around consistency that we are hearing a lot from people that we are coaching is that they don't know which manager they will get on a particular day because they may not, people are not showing up with the same tone. They have these emotional swings. And so people are like so scared to know when to bring something up with their manager because the manager is not showing up with that consistency. So that's something I would really encourage everybody listening is to think about how you are showing up. And I'm not saying be a robot, that if you are going through certain things, be transparent as transparent as you can with your team and say, you know what, I'm really not having a good day today. Can we take this tomorrow? Rather than being short or snapping, because that's a sure way of shutting the people up around you and shutting them out from your world because they are now very apprehensive to bring up anything because they don't know how you are going to react because you react differently on different days.
When that's that, and I love that you said that it's being human because we're all human. People can, I've been there. Terentia has sat with me once, twice, and we've been through turbulent times, and I've had bits or feedback where I've obviously been under the pressure and it's come across. And I know if you are studying your own emotional intelligence, which I really encourage people to take assessments or meet with a coach or really analyze yourself first. I have terrible emotional perception. I say it all the time to my team and to everyone. So everyone, I'm a terrible poker player. Um, but that comes across heavily when times are not great. So that 10% rule to me is huge because I'm like, how do I show up for my team? How do I show up for those around me?
Yeah.
Because that emotion is good for me in that moment, but it's not good for those that I'm hoping to support or build. And I think the thing to take away is when you're consistent, people relax and their brains stop scanning for danger. They stop scanning for problems. We talked at the beginning around the social threat monitoring. You don't want that to be happening in your team because if they're looking for problems, they're not looking for solutions. They're venting or moaning or, and you're
Yes.
almost fulfilling a self-fulfilling prophecy where the issue is becoming
Yeah.
unbalanceable.
Yeah. I think another one that comes up quite often is leaders not following through on small commitments. So on small things that they promise. Uh, yes, you can forget. Absolutely, we are human, and this is why we also encourage the people complaining to also give their leaders some grace and go have an open conversation, and because they may just genuinely have forgotten. But we can't always use that as an excuse as leaders. So if we need to write things down to remember, put things on a to-do list to remember, we need to find those tangible ways to remember. Because again, your team is watching. They are looking to see how you will show up for them, how, on the small things. Because if they can't trust you on the small things, they won't be able to trust you with the big things. And so, and that just has a ripple effect to the team, the wider team, and then the organization as a whole. So those are the things I would say from a consistency perspective we can be thinking about as leaders.
It's funny, I had an experience like that when I stepped into my first leadership role right out of university, managed 25 warehouse workers in a distribution center in Phoenix, Arizona. And there were a time on my shift that you were supposed to give out the pay slips. And I would decided I might give it out a bit later, or I wasn't fulfilling it when they were expecting it. I kind of forgotten, so I ran the pay stubs over like an hour or 2 hours later. The impact that had on that team was immense, which seems crazy because I've always thought at the time, like, "Oh, I know the money's hit my bank account." But I suppose back then we weren't really utilizing mobile banking. I'd say back then, that sounds really
Yeah,
data.
old.
12 years ago. Um, but that small change made a huge impact across my team. So and I recognized that in the next session, and there was 360 feedback that came back, and I was like, "That's so crazy," because to me, that seemed like such a small thing, but to them, it meant so much. And I think that's that, as you mentioned, that with the 10% and the other things that we've disclosed today, it's about giving that reassurance to your team. I think just to summarize, like, because we got off to a bit of a rocky start with this episode, so we're taking a bit longer than we anticipated. We are trying to keep it short, and you can pick something up when you join our Breaking the Chain episodes live in a 20, 30 minutes. Um, but remember that your micro behaviors are shaping your culture every day in your company. You have control of your team. I know you can't always control company culture. We have that feedback a lot. I know T's had it with her coaching sessions, but you can impact the people that you support and that you have ownership for and responsibility. So bring calm, bring clarity, bring consistency, and remember the 10% rule. Display confidence.
And I think something maybe some people need to hear today is that your team doesn't need a perfect leader. They just need someone who is steady, who is stable, who is calm, who is bringing them clarity, who is consistent, who is communicating, and who is building their confidence. Because we are building our confidence on a daily basis. So we're not striving for perfection here because it's an unattainable expectation. We are striving to be better than we were yesterday. So today to be better than we were yesterday, and tomorrow to be better than it was today. And that's all we are doing, not competing with the person on your left and right. It's with yourself. Yeah. And just getting better. Because when you get better as a leader, everybody around you gets better as well.
Presence, being calm, and consistency is leadership, big elements of leadership. So take that away from this session. We hope everyone's had a chance to take something from this session. We hope to see you again next week. We're doing these sessions every week, 12 p.m. UK time, GMT time. We've been very excited to see that we've had more viewers join us this week and a really good engagement on the chat. Thank you guys for discussing amongst yourselves. And join us again next week. We've got some amazing guests in the pipeline. And should you be interested in learning more about the stuff we're discussing as these topics, we have just launched Impel Connect. You can access it at app.impelconnect.com. It is a leadership development coach in your pocket. It's been something that T and I have had in the works for a very, very, very long time, since when we actually met and discussed building the business. But thank you so much for joining. We'll see you all again next week, and get out there and lead your teams.
Amazing. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us for our latest episode of Breaking the Chain. If you'd like to see more episodes, you can check us out online at www.impeltalent.com/podcast. And if you'd like to perhaps put a question into us or be featured on one of our next episodes, you can email us at info@impeltalent.com. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next week.